views and opinions expressed by callers, guests, and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of Black Talk Radio Network and Black Talk Media Podcast. Black Talk Radio is new black media for the new millennium.
No, we won't renounce the debt. America bounced the check. And no, it ain't all about the dough, but my people still poor. Reparations is due, so just give me what you owe. No, we won't renounce the debt. America bounced the check. And no, it ain't all about the dough, but my people still poor. Reparations is due, so just give me what you owe. Capitalists are the enemy, but we get treated like the villain. When prison is homicide, cause they making a killing. And war generates more loot, so that's why Bush is going off. Half cocked like Joey Butterfugo, he don't care about jobs it seems. So I gotta use my pen to get money like an ATM machine. The economy's at its lowest by far, so the black man gotta work hard like male porno stars. To my soldiers at a COBRA, hold your head, it's not over. Jim Crow ain't dead, he just got a little older, more colder, so we gotta be less passive, more bolder. So the hell can wag the road when the playing field ain't level yet. I thought you know, only credit they'll get from me is an IOU, and I don't care about no damn quotas. Just give me what you owe for force to take it back like Sam Cofer. No, we won't renounce the debt. America bounced the check. And no, it ain't all about the dough, but my people still poor. Reparations is due, so just give me what you owe. No, we won't renounce the debt. America bounced the check.
Welcome to Conversation Reparations. Conversation Reparations. On Black Talk Radio, we are glad to bring you another installment where we will be giving you news about the reparations movement, as well as giving you background information about the reparations movement, as well as giving you upcoming events in the reparations movement, because this movement is the movement of the day for people of African descent. And this is the one place where you can get more information and get informed about what is going on, what has been going on, and what, like I said, is going on and is coming up as well. So today's show, again, my name is Brother Jumoke Ifetayo, and I am currently serve as the Southeast Regional Representative of COBRA. I also serve as the male co-chair of the Atlanta chapter of COBRA, and I'm also the facilitator of a special committee we call the Ashe Committee. And my co-host is Bonita, Lacy. Introduce yourself.
Good evening. My name is Bonita, Lacy. I am the co-chair of COBRA Atlanta, the temporary co-chair so far. And I am also the director of an organization called Healing Hearts of Families USA Ministries. And I am excited to be on tonight. Don't have a lot to say in my intro tonight, except for I'd like to pay homage to Queen Mother Moore.
Yes. So thank you, Bonita. So yes, this show we're going to focus on lifting up Queen Mother Moore, and icon in the reparations movement and in the Black nationalist movement and the movement for liberation for people of African descent. And her birthday is July 27th, her birthday. And so often during this time of the year, we take some time to reflect on her contributions to the reparations movement, as well as we're still in the early phases of doing this show. So we wanted to give you more background about COBRA specifically. And then again, we'll continue to stretch out and talk about other organizations and other periods of reparations and the reparations movement. But today we're gonna focus in on Queen Mother Moore, and we're gonna just also give you some more information, just general information about COBRA, background information on COBRA. So Bonita, you want to share a little bit about Queen Mother Moore, and then we're gonna play a video clip about her.
Okay, great, great. I would. Queen Mother Moore was an African American civil rights leader and a black nationalist who was friends with such civil rights leaders as Marcus Garvey, Nelson Mandela, Rosa Parks, and Jesse Jackson. She was a figure in American civil rights movement and a founder of the Republic of New Africa. She was born in New Iberia, Louisiana. She died in Brooklyn, New York, or descended in Brooklyn, New York. Winnie Mandela paid tribute to her. And I want to talk about some of the things that she's done that relate to H.R. 40. Representative Conyers introduced it in 1989. And this month's hearings would not be possible without Queen Mother Moore, the founder of the modern reparations movement. So I'm giving people a little bit of history about her. She was indeed a black woman at the center of the push for reparations for more than a century. So therefore, we have to pay homage to black women who are sometimes behind the scenes, sometimes up front in reparations and in the movement, period. So I'd like to pay homage to her. And that's a little bit of short history. I don't want to go too far in it since we have a clip. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and play that video clip now. And we're ready for the Queen Mother Moore video clip.
So while we're waiting, I can say this. By 1950,
Queen Mother Moore.
She took action.
Audley Moore was the daughter of parents Ella and St. Croix Moore, who were the children of former slaves. Moore's grandmother, Noah Henry, was born into slavery, the product of her mother being raped by her in slavery. Moore's grandfather was lynched, leaving her grandmother to raise 5 children on her own. Audley Moore was born on July 27, 1898 in New Iberia, Louisiana, where both of her parents would die before she graduated to 4th grade. She would become her family's primary caretaker as she learned how to become a hairdresser by the age of 15. In 1918, she was working as a volunteer nurse in the midst of an influenza outbreak. During World War I, she and her sisters worked in Anniston, Alabama to help create what she called the Black USO to help provide medical care and services for black soldiers. During the early 1920s, while traveling the country, she learned that racism was ingrained into the culture of the United States. It was not just the culture of the southern states. After returning to Louisiana, she would experience a life-changing moment. She was able to hear the Honorable Marcus Garvey speak about black unity and collective black empowerment. Hearing the words of Garvey would lead her to becoming a member and eventually a leader of the United Negro Improvement Association. Moore, along with her husband and sisters, would move to Harlem, New York during the early 1920s. This is when she became active in the civil rights movement of the time. Despite repeated arrests, she organized and fought for domestic workers in the Bronx and helped black tenants fight against their white slumlords. In 1931, she participated in a march to Harlem along with the Communist Party to advocate for justice for the Scottsboro Board. She would later become a member of the Communist Party as well as the International Labor Defense. As a member of the Communist Party, Moore became the party's representative for the New York State Assembly in 1938 and alderman in 1940. Queen Mother Moore was determined to make a difference for her people. She became a member of the National Association for Colored Women and the National Council of Negro Women. But by the 1950s, she ended her relationship with the Communist Party because it no longer supported self-determination for African Americans. Her next step was to found the Universal Association of Ethiopian Women, which was an anti-lynching group that also fought for the rights of African Americans on welfare and in prison. In 1957, Moore would present a petition supporting reparations, land, and self-determination against genocide to the United Nations. She would present a second petition in 1959. In her petition, she asked for a monetary sum of $200 billion and a returning of any African people who wanted to return to the continent. In 1963, she would form the Reparations Committee of Descendants of U.S. slaves to further her demands for reparations. She would publish her analysis of reparations titled, Why Reparations? Reparations is the battle cry for the economic and social freedom of more than 25 million descendants of African slaves. Moore created a detailed analysis of why African people deserve reparations and how reparations could be paid out to the descendants of enslaved Africans. Moore was able to point to times in history where disenfranchised people had paid reparations for their oppression. She was even able to provide information proving that the United States paid reparations to Japanese Americans for their mistreatment. Queen Mother Moore is most known for her international fight for reparations for African people. She was also known for her saying, reparations, reparations, keep on, we've got to win. Moore was able to mobilize and gain over 1 million signatures and present them to President Kennedy on the 100th anniversary of the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. During the 1960s, Moore was instrumental in the Republic of New Africa's independent charter as one of the first signers of the document. This charter would help create 5 independent African states, which would also help in the process of creating independent African nations. She would travel extensively throughout the African continent during the 1960s and the 70s. During an Ashanti naming ceremony in Ghana, Audley Moore officially became Queen Mother Audley Moore. Her first act as Queen Mother was to help found the Eloise Moore College of African Studies, Vocational, and Industrial School in Parksville, New York. Queen Mother Moore would die in May of 1997, but before her death, she was present for Nelson Mandela's visit to the U.S. in 1990 and was one of the 5 female speakers at the Million Man March in 1995. She was a woman on a mission to free her people and didn't allow anything to stop her. She spent the remainder of her adult life fighting for the reparations and the rights of African people. Queen Mother Audley Moore, we proudly stand on your shoulders. For more information, please visit www.ontheshoulders1.com. That is on the shoulders, the number 1.com.
All right. So we got a really good overview there of Queen Mother Moore's life. And actually, we're going to play another clip later on. Shortly, we'll play another clip of an interview where she'll actually tell some of those stories, which will give some more even in-depth information about some of those different aspects of her life in terms of the meeting where she saw Marcus Garvey, as well as her involvement with the Communist Party and some other things. So we'll get to hear from her. But 2 things I did want to also lift up is that Queen Mother Moore wrote a beautiful poem about reparations. She actually wrote it on her birthday. She wrote it July 27th, 1950. And we also have a rare document. I was just blessed, I guess, to be at the right place at the right time. I was at one of the COBRA conventions or meetings, and somebody had this rare document of a, I guess you call it a pamphlet that Queen Mother Moore and her organization put out on reparations. And I used to make copies of that and make that available, and we'll probably need to do that again, make that available. And it's interesting, it's got a price of $1 on this pamphlet, and doesn't have a date on it, but it's about a maybe 30-page, maybe 20-page document. It's called Why Reparations, Money for Negroes. Reparations is the battle cry for the economic and social freedom of more than 25 million descendants of American slaves, by Mrs. Audley A. Moore, President and founder of the Reparations Committee for the Descendants of American Slaves. And she goes into giving a rationale for reparations, and she also talks about poverty and lynching, and she gives examples of other reparations claims. So we will at some point we'll figure out we'll reproduce this document and make more copies of it, make it available. I'm going to read from her poem. It's called What's the Hour of the Night? After 4 scores years of freedom, our so-called leaders say the race has made great progress and we face the dawn of day. But the day is not quite dawning. Millions of my people stand pleading at the bars of justice for reparations and land. We're not free in this country, and the truth is the light. So I turn to my watchmen. What's the hour of the night? We died fighting for democracy. I admit this is to be true. Yes, countless Africans, men and women, have no homes or work to do. If we wish to see by the daylight or the rising of the sun, we need our self-determination, our own affairs to run. Since only reparations will put freedom in our sight, let us turn and ask the watchman, what's the hour of the night? We fought with the mighty armies when they battled with the Huns, faced the fierce pangs of combat, heard the roar of mighty guns. But no change came in our condition when the smoke had cleared away. But the blood we shed in battle did not bring the dawn of day. All of our suffering and service left us in the same old plight. So I turned to the watchman. What's the hour of the night? The whites are celebrating their freedom, a bicentennial whose praise they sing. But Africans are also jumping on board, although we didn't get a thing. We're still struggling for integration, as though it was a glorious fight. So I've got to ask my watchman, what's the hour of the night? Music is an art or science in which African men reign supreme, but the story of our players is still a vision or a dream. But we have great voices for singing, but we have no voice in court. Imagine being attacked by police dogs just to register and vote. With self-determination, we would have our perfect right, so we turn to ask our watchman, what's the hour of the night? African men boast of their religion, but I wonder if they should. When you take an inventory, you'll find them not so good. We build thousands of fine churches with the dollars that we give, yet masses of our people have no decent place to live. We say God is our rich father, and yet we always in a tight. Watchmen, strike the match and tell me, what's the hour of the night? Civil rights laws just for us is proof that we're not free. How could we be fooled to think we had a share in this democracy? When foreigners come here, they made citizens by choice. Citizenship was imposed upon us. We never had a voice. The passage of the 14th Amendment took away the right. So you better ask your watchman, what's the hour of the night? Time is running out for us, a deadline we must meet to file reparations petitions and make politicians earn their seats. If we're to win this battle, every organization must join the fight. Then we will tell our watchmen what's the hour of the night. Again, that's a poem written by Queen Mother Moore. And so you want to add, Sister Bonita, to some of what was in the
that's
we just
so
played?
true.
Or I know one thing, I did want to make one correction. He when he mentioned the Republic of Africa, said it was to create 5 nations. It was actually 5 states of the South: South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, that were to be created into one nation state for people of African descent called the Republic of New Africa. I did want to make that correction in the video. You wanted to add anything?
Well, I want to say that everything in there is so true as if it was written today.
It's true. It's true. You're talking about the poem now.
The poem, from the poem.
Yeah, I agree. It's true. It's true. She wrote that in 1950, and it's still relevant today. You're right.
So what does that say about progress? I mean,
well, we do seem to be making some progress right now in terms of reparations. But
as far as the policemen and all those things in the poem that were happening, they're still happening today.
This is true. This is true. Yes, yes. So let's continue and let's hear from Queen Mother Moore herself. We'll play this interview. This is actually a part of a longer interview, but we're just going to play about 10 minutes of this interview, which I think was about a 30-minute interview. We're ready for that clip now, brother. throughout the world. Her name is Queen Mother Moore. Welcome, Queen Mother.
Thank you.
How did you become known as Queen Mother Moore?
Well, that name was bestowed upon me by the African students, first of all, as a result of my years of activities in this country. They gave it to me. And when I went to Africa, to Dr. Nkrumah's funeral, the chief heard about me, and he sent for me to come to him. And I went, and he said, I'm going to make you officially Queen Mother of the Ashanti. And he initiated me Queen Mother. But I was Queen Mother before I went to Africa.
Did you personally know the late Kwame Nkrumah?
Yes, I did. I knew him here.
Okay, you met him while he was visiting here?
Yes.
Okay, and that is in conjunction with your work?
Yes.
I understand that you sent a petition to the United Nations in, I think, 1957 for reparations for the black people in America. Explain something about that to us.
Yes, the petition called for us to go back to Africa, for those who wanted to go back. And for those who wanted to stay here, there had to be certain indemnity given for the people who wanted to stay, the people who wanted to go.
What kind of indemnity?
Well, I was asking for $200 billion.
$200 billion to indemnify?
Yes, for the injury that we have received. The injury as a result of our enslavement.
Okay, that's for our 400 years of enslavement.
Yes.
As reparations, we requested $200 billion.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, when you sent this petition to the United Nations, what kind of response did you get?
I got a very good response. And he told me that we needed a member nation to introduce the resolution, since we were not officially members of the UN.
Is this with your work with the Republic of North Africa?
No, that was not. I was as a member of the Ethiopian Women, the Universal Association of Ethiopian Women.
I understand that you founded that organization.
Yes.
And what was that organization about?
To save our men from execution. They were being executed at the rate of 2 a week almost. There was somebody being executed.
Then unjustly executed?
Yes, we thought they were unjustly executed. And we tried to save some of them. We did save some.
Mention a few.
From execution. Labat and Poret. We saved those. We saved Jenkins. We saved another brother.
Well, there was a number of people that were saved from execution because they were unjustly charged with crimes.
Yes.
And where did this take place?
In New Orleans.
Okay, you're from New Orleans, yes. I understand. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then you also worked with Marcus Garvey.
Yes.
Tell us first something about Marcus Garvey.
Well, I was first brought into the Marcus Garvey movement by the fact that I understood that he was to come and speak to us in Louisiana. Mm-hmm. And we went to the meeting, and lo and behold, he didn't come. And we heard that the mayor refused to allow him to come. So we were very incensed about it and got a delegation to go see why. And then it was guaranteed that Marcus Garvey would come the next night. And the hall was packed with people. And everybody went with ammunition.
They had guns?
They had guns. Everybody had guns. Blue Steel, Smith & Wessons, German Lugers. They had plenty German Lugers because, the war had the boys from the war and everything. Okay. And I had 2 guns with me. And they all had guns and ammunition, a bag of ammunition. Everybody had what you call a a suitcase today.
All right.
Throughout the,
We used to call satchels
what was all this?
ammunition
Why were you so armed?
because we was afraid the police would stop him from coming again,
Okay.
and we wanted to protect him. And so we went. 3,500 people was in that hall. And so when Garvey came, we applauded very much. And he said, my friends, I want to apologize for not speaking to you last night. But the reason I didn't speak to you is because the mayor permitted himself to be used as a stooge by the police department to prevent me from speaking to you. And when he said that, the police jumped up and said, I'll run you in. And when the police did that, everybody jumped up on the benches. We had benches then. And took out their guns straight up. The guns were straight up in the air. Speak, Garvey, speak. And Garvey said, and as I was saying, and he went and repeated himself. And the police filed out of there like little puppy dogs with their little tails between their legs and filed out of the hall.
Okay, after which I understand you started a chapter of his organization?
No, I didn't start a chapter. We had a chapter going down there.
Okay. And you purchased stock in
the Black Star Line, yes.
What was that? What was the Black Star Line?
Black Star Line was ships that Marcus Garvey was buying.
For what purpose?
To go to Africa. To go to Africa and to trade with Africa. He was going to trade with the West Indies and Africa.
And what was the result of the purchase of the ships? Did they ever get to Africa?
No, the people sabotaged the ships. There was great sabotage. You know, on Garvey's board, he had a lot of enemies of our people. You couldn't talk about Africa in those days without expecting the agents to be around you. You had the agents of Belgium, you had the agents of France, you had the agents of England, and all those agents were sitting on his board.
Or trying to sabotage his work?
And yes, in the form of blackskins.
Okay.
You see, so they sabotaged the ships.
All right.
And then they charged Garvey with fraud because they were saying that he was selling unworthy ships, you know.
How did the work of Marcus Garvey influence your life?
Oh, very much so. Oh, yes, because he taught me about the glories of Africa. I never went to sleep anymore since then. Never. I did much study since then of my own.
On the glories of Africa?
Yes.
You've made numerous trips to Africa. I understand that you recently attended the Women's Conference, the International Women's Conference.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yes, that was very great. It was very widely attended with 8,000 women.
Okay. Yes. During your travels, recent travels to Africa, you went to Ethiopia, I understand.
Yes, I went to Ethiopia.
Did you witness some of the famine?
No, they didn't let us go there. We didn't see anything of the famine. You wouldn't even know they had a famine. They kept that from the people.
I guess that's sometimes like people visiting New York never get to see Harlem.
That's right. That's right.
They just show you the...
That's right, the part they want you to see. That's right.
You have land in upstate, Parksville, I believe it is. But
yes.
It's you have the Mount Addis Ababa.
Mount Addis Ababa.
Okay, and you doing work on that mountain.
Well, we want to build there a college of African studies. We want to build a monument to the 100 million Africans who perished in the slave trade, and for those who died since. All the people who died in the struggle. 100 million died in the slave trade, yes.
So that's our Holocaust.
Yes, that's our Holocaust. Holocaust. Yes.
All right, this institution that you want to build, the purpose of it will be to educate Black people?
Yes.
You are tuned in to the Black Talk Radio Network. For podcasts and live program scheduling, visit us on the web at blacktalkradionetwork.com.
Yes, I think we're pretty much at the end of that clip anyway. So yes, we so good to hear Queen Mother in her own voice. One of the things I wanted to stress, and it's one of the things that's important to me to stress when we talk about our story, when we talk about her story, is that oftentimes I think we've become conditioned in this European culture, Western culture in the United States, to focus on individuals, to focus on individual achievement, to highlight individuals and lift up individuals. And so I don't want to, and I've been one person that said that we shouldn't do that yet. We're lifting up Queen Mother more, but I think it's important if you listen to her bio and listen to what she even talks about herself, is that, you know, she did her work like most activists, like most leaders, through organizations. So it's very important that we also lift up these organizations. And this is the real basis of community organizing and activism, is people joining with organizations and doing the work. You know, she talked about being a part of the UNIA. And I think when we say UNIA, sometimes we leave off the ACL, as the Universal Negro Improvement Association African Communities League. That's actually the full name of the organization. So it's the largest African organization in the world, and there still hasn't been an organization, a mass-based organization as large as that organization today, that Garvey, along with his organization, was able to build. And you also heard she was a part of the Communist Party for a while. You heard that she was active with the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa for a while. And she was supportive of COBRA. She created her own organizations, as I mentioned earlier, the organization called the Reparations Committee for the Descendants of American Slaves, as well as she mentioned the Universal Ethiopian Women's Federation. So again, it's very important that we highlight individuals because of their work sometimes is so exemplary that we want to lift it up. But I always want to, whenever we speak about our story and history, or even people alive today, we understand that people do their work through organizations and institutions. And so I just wanted to emphasize those organizations and institutions that Queen Mother Moore worked through in order to do the work that she did and have the success that she did have. So I think at this point, if you had anything else you wanted to add, Sister Bonita, we might go ahead and switch gears up and start talking a little bit about COBRA.
Okay. Yeah, I got a couple of questions for new people who may be on the line.
Queen Mother Moore or COBRA?
About reparations, period. They go between Queen Mother Moore and COBRA.
Okay.
The first one is, what is reparations, for people who may be on the line, may be new and don't know? And will you name a couple of types of reparations that Black people have expressed and asked for, a demand for in reparations?
Okay, I was wanting to actually give you the actual verbatim definition from COBRA, if I can pull that up. But okay. Basically, the definitions of reparations is making amends for wrong, atoning and restoring people or group or nation that have been violated and have had their human rights violated. That's the basic definition, and close to the COBRA definition. The COBRA definition also spells out that the violators can be governments, corporations, institutions, and families. And as important as we engage in the reparations movement, primarily COBRA is focused on government. However, there are movements that we see right now on college campuses in terms of engaging their institution on reparations, as well as we have had lawsuits and other forms of people to focus on reparations on corporations and even families. So that's the basic definition of reparations, making amends for a wrong that has been done to a group of people, and that could take on different forms. The United Nations, because there were so many different reparations cases being brought to the United Nations, they decided to standardize a definition of reparations and said that reparations represents full repair, restoring the people to the place where they would have been if the crime had not happened. And they say in order to do that, reparations takes in place of 5 forms. One which is compensation. 2, restitution, which deals with repairing all of the institutions and things that would have been in place, again, if those people had not been harmed. Deals with their citizenship and nationality, education, and all of that. The next one is rehabilitation, which deals with the psychological and mental health and trauma that the people have gone through based on what was done to them, and how do they heal for that, and having the resources and processes available for them to heal from the trauma that has happened to them. And we know that trauma can also be passed down intergenerationally in our case, because the crime has been waged on us for over 400 years, and there's over 400 years of trauma that's been passed down from one generation to the next. And then you have satisfaction, which addresses how do you restore the dignity of a people. Satisfaction looks at education, again, also looks at monuments and commemorations, an apology, all those things that would help to restore the dignity of the people that have been harmed. And the last form of reparations coming from the United Nations is cessation and non-repetition, meaning that the reparations plan would include ending the harms, because again, even we look at African Americans, the people of African descent in the United States, we say that the harms are still persisting, even as we talked about in the poem with Queen Mother Moore, that how those harms of disparities with education, disparities in health, the criminal injustice system as it relates to us, police murder, police killing, police harassment, and on and on. And so that the reparations package would also include, or reparations plan would also include, ending those, the continuation of the crimes and harms being waged on us, as well as designing in such a way that it would, those harms couldn't happen in the future, which is non-repetition. So that's the basic definitions of reparations, general definition of reparations, along with the United Nations 5 forms of reparations. Then there was another part to that question you had asked me. You said, what were some examples? Is that what you said?
Yes. Yes, I did.
Yeah, so some examples, well, like I said, well, one example is people have talked about is education is one that's a big one for people of African descent. So, you know, that could include from pre-K through PhD education being subsidized for those who want to go to college or even trade schools or even other alternative schools. You know, somebody may want to get a certificate in something that may not be, say, taught at a traditional college. So that's one form form of reparation that's been put forward. Another form of reparations is freeing of our political prisoners and prisoners of war. We know from the 60s all the way up to today, we have people who were fighting for our rightful reparations or fighting for making other demands on the government. And just because they were making those demands, many of them were set up and put in jail. And then there's even some who are in exile right now who are not able to come back to the United States because of pending court cases. And they may live now in Tanzania or Cuba and other places. So that's another reparations demand, and the amnesty for our political prisoners and prisoners of war. There's so many different forms that reparations could take. Matter of fact, that's probably a show again in and of itself. Some people say in terms of the compensation, not paying taxes would be another form. Reparations for people of African descent. Like I said, that could be really broad and deep, and we could spend a whole show just on talking about
Brother Jumoke,
forms of reparations.
Brother Jumoke, Scotty here, and greetings to you and Sister Bonita. Yeah, one of the things that our organization has been pushing for through the Black Talk Radio Network is the actual abolishment of slavery. As we've, done programs on New Abolitionist Radio and talked to representatives of COBRA, talked to representatives like IWOC International, the Incarcerated Workers Organization that's doing a lot of this organizing behind national prison strikes in the United States. But, I have to always interject into these conversations that slavery has not been abolished. And that's part of what the UN did issue a reparations report, as we heard Queen Mother talk about her, trying to go through that avenue right there. And so the UN last year did issue a report. And so it also includes what they call mass incarceration. UN said, for the continued mass incarceration, police terrorism, and what have you. And so, a lot of people having that conversation about reparations are limiting it to just, 1600s to 1865. But there's plenty of scholarship work that shows that it still continues slavery in different forms, which the UN recognizes, because in the Declaration of Human Rights, it says slavery shall be abolished in all its forms. So it's recognizing that slavery takes on various forms. And in the United States, via the 13th Amendment, it says slavery and involuntary servitude shall be abolished except as punishment for crime. And then that really puts into context what we're still dealing with, the same black codes. They don't call them black codes no more. They just call them laws. They call them they call it the drug war. But they target certain communities and put them in prison slavery, behind those laws. So I would say any reparations package from the point of view of a modern day abolitionist has to be the repeal and replacement of the 13th Amendment. So it has no exceptions. Thank you for allowing me to give my input on what different forms of reparations.
Sure, and I'm actually glad you brought that up, because it's oftentimes when I talk about political prisoners and prisoners of war, I actually go further than that. And I held back this time, so I'm glad you actually interjected that. So, one of the things I say, and it's not necessarily, and I qualify this to say it's not necessarily a position of COBRA or, hasn't been agreed upon point, but I say that, part of reparations would be the abolishment of prisons, as well as the release of all the brothers and sisters who are in jail could also be considered a reparations demand. So yeah, we're definitely, that is also part of the conversation, the abolition and ending of prisons in general, because I think that, one of the things, like you so actively cited from the 13th Amendment, where it said with the exception of a punishment for a crime, which means that slavery does still continue in the United States in the form of the prison work and prison system. So yeah, that is definitely something that would be addressed or need to be addressed. I would agree with in terms of our reparations to me.
Okay, and for me, working in the field of people coming from prisons, formerly incarcerated persons, we call them at the federal level, people who've been incarcerated for crimes set by sometimes criminals themselves. But I look at it as reparations need to also erase people's records automatically. That's number one. And allow people with crimes where some of the crimes were non-violent, etc., to have the opportunity to work in what I call emerging markets, which may be our hemp markets, our marijuana markets. To me, those were pioneers in that particular market, and now our government wants to legalize it and make other folks accessible to the income from it, but still use the slave method of prohibiting and barring people of color from being in legal industries now. And reparations has to balance that whole field of the criminal justice system for people who serve time and, they're no longer incarcerated. And then also, if they're in jail, how can a system hold a person in jail knowing that when they went to jail, they had child support or they had children to feed, and not pay them so that the children can still be fed, from the parents who may be incarcerated. And that whole system brings down generation after generation of people when they incarcerate them. That takes away support from the families. And we've dealt with that on mass incarceration issues, how the slavery system of incarceration impacts families generationally and continues the cycle of a slavery by third-party demands from the government for free labor.
Yeah, that's right.
So we have to put that on board that, they need to erase records. They need to pay people for work in the prison system, because the prison system is actually listed on NASDAQ, which means that they sell stuff back to the federal government, and they sell it at or above cost to other individuals or other businesses within the government from our tax money, and they make money off of it, but they utilize the people that they target for mass incarceration as the slave labor. And That's not right. That's, a continuation. It's a morph system of slavery by another name.
Exactly. So we will be asserting that there's a form, what's called restorative justice, which is actually a movement that's emerging in the United States and other places as well. And restorative justice is really just based on indigenous and people of African descent forms of justice and healing, and usually, and actually, I like to say that people don't actually commit a crime. Again, that's a certain mindset. But people can do things that is a violation that can harm someone, or as I say, break the trust in the community. And if someone does that, then there are certain processes that were put in place in terms of community circles and things like that were put in place to address that and bring that person back into harmony with the person that they violated and with the entire community, because really we believe in communal concepts, and so if someone violates an individual in the community, really have violated the whole community. And so there were processes put in place to address that. But again, that could be a whole other show too. I'm going to probably say that all throughout these programs, like, restorative justice and criminal justice and reparations, abolition, political prisoners, prisoners of war, all of that is a very important subject.
Yeah. So, Jumoke, I want to ask you a question too. Like some of the unique ways people are engaging now in reparations in the movement, and what can other Black-led grassroots organizations that are not necessarily in reparations, what can they do to become a collective movement maker on the issue rather than being a competitive type of movement as individuals, so that we can collectively move forward together? What are some of the things that Black-led grassroots organizations or Black-led groups of individuals who want to do something in the movement, what are some of the things that they can do?
Well, the short answer for me would be joining COBRA, quite simply, because in COBRA, first of all, it stands for the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. And when COBRA was organized, it was organized primarily with organizations and individuals, but primarily with organizations. And particularly those organizations that were initially called together with those organizations who already say have reparations as one of their tenets or something that they support, but it wasn't necessarily something that they were fully pushing or at the top of their list of issues that they were pushing. So again, organizations like the New African People's Organization, at that time the government, the Provisional Government of the Republic of Africa, the National Council of Black Lawyers, and other organizations and formations came together in the formation of COBRA. And so they had one of the first convening meetings, as you'll see on our website, was September 26, 1987. But actually, COBRA didn't officially get incorporated until February of 1988, in coming out of some meetings that were held in Washington, D.C. And so after COBRA incorporated, they began to, after, I think in 1990, they had we had our first national convention in Washington. And then from that year on, we've continued to have national conventions, moving it around to different cities, primarily cities where we have COBRA chapters. The last convention, which we talked about before, was just in Detroit, Michigan in June. And so our conventions are usually every year around the fourth weekend of June. And in addition to that, we have, as I said, we have chapters and organizational affiliates around the country. We even have chapters and supporters in Europe and in the Caribbean and in Africa. What COBRA also did was to engage us. We created 9 commissions, and the idea of the commissions were these were like how we were going to organize the work of COBRA, how we would go about getting reparations through these different areas. So those commissions are economic development, human resources, legal strategies, legislation, information and media, membership and organizational development, international affairs, youth, and education. And then we also have standing committees. We have our nomination committee, executive committee, the convention committee, and the Ashe committee and national campaign.
So that means somebody attached to any one of those different points can volunteer if they have expertise or just have a heart for it or have a passion for it. They can join COBRA and they can be attached to one of those committees, moving the movement forward, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
I'm going to read the mission statement of COBRA. And I was thinking about discussing some of the different campaigns that we had, but I'm looking at the time now and seeing time has moved fast. We're coming to the close of the show. So we'll save that for another show. We'll talk about some of the campaigns that COBRA has organized in the past, as well as what are some of the current campaigns that we're focused on now. The mission of the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America is to win full reparations for Black African descendants residing in the United States and its territories for the genocidal war against Africans that created the transatlantic slave trade, chattel slavery, Jim Crow, and chattel slavery's continuing vestiges we call the Ma'afa. To that end, COBRA shall organize and mobilize all strata of these Black communities into an effective mass-based reparations movement. And COBRA shall also serve as a coordinating body for the reparations effort in the United States. Further, through its leadership role in the reparations movement within the United States and its territories, and COBRA recognizes reparations as a just demand for all African peoples and shall join with others in building the international reparations movement. And again, I think that somewhat, again, further answers the question you just asked me, Sister Bonita, which is the fact that, to me, I say to people, COBRA is the reparations table. You know, a lot of people say, well, there's different reparations organizations and stuff, and that may be true. However, to me, COBRA represents the bringing together of all of the reparations organizations and even organizations that don't consider themselves reparations organizations to come together in support of the reparations movement. And I think that is what makes COBRA so unique. I know even here in Atlanta chapter, we can personally talk about how we have worked in bring in different organizations, whether it's the Nation of Islam, Laws Foundation, Hebrew Israelite, National Action Network, NAACP, Delta Sigma Theta, fraternities, sororities, different grassroots organizations. We work to bring everyone to the table to advance reparations.
So, brother, I also read that Queen Mother Moore was a member of COBRA until she died. So, you know, for those who want to start from the Queen and end with the Queen, will stay with the Queen. So I wanted to say that to people who are looking for something to do and organizations that are looking to be a part of a collective movement. It doesn't matter that you have a reparations committee or a reparations group. What we need to do is join together as a full force with one single goal: for reparations for African descendants in America. So we're asking you to come to, if we're in Atlanta, come to our next meeting, which will be August the 11th at 3 p.m. at the neighborhood church in Candler Park, and learn more about what you can do to move forward in reparations as a collective and collective organization. Brother?
Sure. And I'll just add, you know, for contact information, our website is in COBRA Online. That's NCOBRA, in COBRAonline.org. You can reach me directly at reparations, the letter J, reparationsj @gmail.com. My number is 678-437-7882. Again, that's 678-437-7882. Again, Sister Bonita said, we welcome you to come and join with us. We will also, in future shows, we'll highlight different chapters around the United States, different COBRA chapters, and have some of their leadership call in and share with us what they're doing locally in their area and their campaigns. So, because we know this is broadcasting nationally and even internationally, so people may not be in Atlanta, but maybe in Indianapolis or Chicago or Detroit or Miami or Selma and many other cities that we have chapters and COBRA supporters. All right. So you've been listening to Conversation Reparations. Conversation Reparations, giving you information about the reparations movement, past, present, and future. I do also want to give a quick update, which I just got an email a few hours ago saying that we have 104 co-sponsors of HR 40, which is amazing. I think the last time we reported out, we had 90 members. No, let me correct that. It's 106. 106 members of Congress have signed on as co-sponsors, which we said 100 was the magic number that we needed to get. So we crossed that mark. So applause to the work of our legislative commission. Applause to anybody out there who have called your congressperson, as we've urged you to do, and whatever work that people may have had in addition to what COBRA has done. But this is really a monumental point that we have crossed over now with the reparation movement. So if you didn't think it was possible, it's really happening right before our eyes right now. And we encourage you to be a part of it and don't be sitting on the sideline watching. Get involved. Conversation and reparations.
Good night.
No, we won't renounce the debt. America bounced the check. And no, it ain't all about the dough, but my people still poor. Reparations is due, so just give me what you owe. No, we won't renounce the debt. America bounced the check. And no, it ain't all about the dough, but seems. So I gotta use my